Fringe North podcast series. So each episode will have some exciting guests from an amazing community of performers and creators who will give us an inside look into both their lives as artists and what they're bringing to the festival this season. Hello, bonjour, Annie. Hola.
This week, I'm so happy to be joined by RJ Downs. Robert, or also known as RJ Downs, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, I go by RJ as for my playwriting stuff generally. Not exactly sure why, but just something that started years ago and I've stuck with it. So
right on. Yeah. Well, it sounds interesting. It sounds who's RJ Downs? It has a good sound to it. So
I think too it's not gender specific, which is nice. So you're not making a preconceived I don't know. What I'm saying, but no preconceived notions going into it.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's cool. So how would you describe yourself for viewers who don't know who you are?
Okay.
As an artist or a person. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, I've been a playwright for 30 some odd years now, and I mostly for a long time lived in Toronto, and then ended up in Kingston for about 10 years, and so I've done a lot of stuff out there. I haven't done a lot of stuff here in the Sault. I had one play last year, Last Dance of the Dark Cloaked Avenger, done by the oh geez, I'm thinking on their name, the Sault Theatre Workshop. That's it. But that's sort of the only thing I've really done here so far. So the Fringe is exciting because it's fun new space, and I wanted to do it last year, but I wasn't able to, and so I'm very excited to do it this year. I've done stuff all over the place in Toronto, in BC, in Hamilton, in Stratford. I did a show, just sort of all, but never. I'm not hugely known out there, but plugging away and keep doing it because I love doing it. So I kind of fell into playwriting in high school, and at some people, oh, you must go for the money, and it's like, well, no, it's there's no money.
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
Percent maybe, yeah.
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 Yeah, like even this year I had a show in the New Ideas Festival at the Alumni Theatre in Toronto a couple months ago, and I can't remember what else, but yeah, every year I've usually got 2 or 3 either smaller shows or bigger shows going on, and just the love of doing it. I don't expect to make a fortune at it. I just expect to have fun and get my work out there.
Right on. That's awesome. So we have a lot of things to talk about. I'm curious about your experience between Toronto, Kingston, and Stratford, a big, theater town, and then coming to the Sault. Like, how has that transition been? What's the inspiration like? Are you finding a community like? Yeah.
Well, it's definitely a lively community here for sure. There's a lot of people really into theater, and that's amazing. I'd say the big difference is mostly maybe the actor pool. There's a lot less people, and you see a lot of the same people, and that's not a bad thing, but you see a lot of the same people in different shows and stuff all the time, and sort of pockets of people. Which again, I think is great. It's a small community. It's not big. In Toronto, you put out a casting call and you get, 10 million people coming at you with different things, and it's hard to work with. Here, it's you kind of have a lot of known entities, and it's nice because you can actually approach people that you like and say, hey, I'd like you to do my show if you're interested, and that sort of stuff. Interestingly, I will say, so Toronto, I found a very inviting community. Kingston, I found it really hard to break into. It took a long time. They were very close knit. Again, lovely people, but they sort of hold on to their own, and it takes a little while to break in there. So it took a few years to sort of soften and get in there. Here, I found people much more willing to sort of step out of their comfort zone and embrace new, I think. So it's been really nice. It's a really nice community to come into and be a part of. So yeah, very welcoming. I would say that for sure.
Well, that's great to hear. Do you feel at all, and I don't want to put words in your mouth,
Yeah,
but sometimes with northern communities or smaller arts centers, um, there's just less of less going on, obviously, so you can't see as much. You don't know, yeah, you can't, you're not in on the what's happening in the big center, so they say. Um, so do you feel at all like a bit of isolation from that?
for
Or
sure. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, there's definitely an isolation. I mean, physically, geographically, there's an isolation for the Sioux.
yeah,
We're trying to sort of there's not any big centers right nearby. You have to travel 2 or 3 hours to get to the next big center. So sure, there's certainly a more closed in community in that way. But I think from what I've seen, that really opens up for local people. I think it's really cool. You get an opportunity to get out there, whereas in some of the bigger centers, you get a little lost in um, what you're trying to put out there. I can speak to like the Toronto Fringe, which I've done a number of times. It's so big that you're fighting to get anyone to come to your show because there's
yeah,
so much going on and so many people and so many shows and every person is in a Fringe show, and you try to support each other, but you can only see so much. Whereas it's kind of nice that this Fringe is still pretty small in that regard, that you can go and enjoy it and see everything and have a good time. um the other thing I feel, and I mean, like I said, I haven't done the French here yet, is the community is a little more welcoming in some ways with the Fringe idea. Like a place like Toronto, the Fringe has gone from being, I mean, it's a wonderful festival, but it's gone from being what the Fringe is, which is sort of like we're trying stuff, we're experimenting, to the reviewers expect your show to be perfect right off the bat, and they go into it, and the second there's anything wrong with your show, they're just going to criticize it and take it down, and
really.
they seem to forget the fact that like this is supposed to be people trying new things and experimenting and playing
Yeah,
around, and
yeah,
and
yeah,
this community feels a lot more open to that.
totally. Huh, that's interesting. Uh, yeah, like they've commercialized the Fringe, which isn't
Yeah.
really that much of a surprise
Well,
because
and
it kind
it
of,
kind of has to because of the size of the place and the size of the
right.
festival. It has to be a big event. But I just find they seem to forget that sort of. It's
The
called the
roots.
Fringe for a reason. It's
Yeah,
supposed to
yeah.
be new and experimental and perhaps
Like,
pushing beyond your comfort zone, not perfectly crafted, everything exactly right shows. They haven't had the time to
yeah,
develop.
yeah, or maybe the budgets, or like, yeah,
Yeah,
you're pushing, like you said, creative freedom, and thinking about the roots of it in Scotland, in Edinburgh. Um,
yeah,
they put on a new festival because they had um, pretty prestigious theater festival, and a lot of performers weren't able to get in. And it's like, what do we do with all these, you know, people with creative and inspiring ideas, but don't have a stage to perform? So they decided, let's put it on the street, which is really
exactly.
cool.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think we really try to uh, promote the arts and promote really creative, I guess, chance taking with Fringe North. And I'm new to the festival as well, so I don't know, I don't know the like local history as much, like of like what the performers and how it's kind of transformed. I know it's grown, and but
mm,
I know it's still very small. So from what we're working with, like a pool of 40-ish artists, which is still pretty good though for Sault Ste. Marie, I
yeah,
think, you know.
yeah, sure.
Um, so it's exciting. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got into theater? What inspired you? Was there a specific moment, or was it like a series of events?
Hmm. Sure. Well, I mean, I started in grade school. I did a couple of plays just as an actor. think it was The Wizard of Oz, and then the little known. It's funny. I've mentioned this to a few people, and a lot of people don't know it. But there's a play called The Canada Goose, and we did it at our school, and so I went from playing the Wizard of Oz to then playing the Wizard of Woe, um, which is a whole other thing. But so I started with that, and I liked theater, but I didn't think too much about it. And then it's funny because I mentioned this actually in the show I'm doing. My mom took me to. I think I was around 10 or 11, and my mom took me to a play called Artichoke, and it was at our community theater. And it was a very adult play. It was about families coming back together and reconnecting and trying to figure out their pasts. But I was mesmerized by the whole thing, and I really took it in. And again, I didn't really think too much of it. But then I got to high school and I started doing drama. And one of the things we had to do in the class was we had to write small plays. And I ended up, I think I wrote three or four for my project. We only had to do one, and I wrote three or four. And I ended up getting back a note from my teacher, Mr. Brady, who was one of my biggest inspirations, and he just wrote on the bottom, "You should submit your work to CBC." And when you're, 17, that's huge.
No
So
kidding.
I don't know if it was warranted, but he kind of inspired me onwards to do that. And so it kind of grew from there. And I fell in love with absurdist theater and sort of tackling the bigger kind of questions of what is it to be, what is reality, what is to be human, what is it, why do we live in a sort of godless, pointless, ridiculous universe that doesn't seem to care about us?
Yeah.
And not that my work is all in that realm, but some of it is, and
Yeah.
yeah, so it just sort of started from there, and I got hooked on it. And what's funny is I actually have a hard time, and this is one of the challenges of the show for me, is I'm terrified to get up on stage myself
Wow.
and perform. But I love watching my work being performed. And this time I'm actually going to get up there and do it. So it's kind of nerve-wracking.
Yeah. That's awesome though. That's a very cool series of events, and it's neat when you're a kid and you see something or you do something and you're just like so mesmerized.
Hmm.
I know what you're talking about. Like when you're seeing something. For me, it was paintings because I'm a painter, and it's like, oh well, now it kind of makes sense. But at the time, I didn't understand it. I
Yeah.
was just drawn, and I didn't really understand a thing. But I just thought like that is really neat. Like I went to there were these small Tom Thompson paintings, and was just so mesmerized by the material and stuff, and fast track 15 years later, I'm painting, and I'm still doing it. But it's interesting that ourselves as young people, like you're drawn to this craft, to this way of expressing, yet we don't really understand that yet, and we're kind of on this journey to figure it out.
Yeah.
um yeah. Did you go to school for theater, or are you mostly self-taught slash
Mostly self-taught. I didn't go specific. I did more of an English side of things.
okay,
But no, it just something that I just played with along the way, and it kind of came along as I went.
yeah, no pun intended, or
Yeah.
pun intended. Yeah, I guess that's part of it, right? The play. That's great. So you mentioned absurdist themes. Is there
Mhm.
any, like, do you have any favorites, any inspirations? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny going back to that being young. One of the early inspirations, again, this teacher, Mr. Brady, he got us to do some Samuel Beckett stuff in class, and I remember stupidly thinking, "Oh, this is easy. I can do this," and not getting the bigger
Yeah.
concept of it. But I would say that pushed me on. Samuel Beckett, the huge one. Harold Pinter, Edward Albee, Sam Shepard, all those. I really kind of fell into people that didn't do straightforward theater. Like I really latched onto the idea of playing with. I love I think that's what I love about playwriting is the you have a box to work in, and a movie can be anywhere and anything, and you can set any location, but in theater you have to work within the space you're in, and I love the imagination of that. I love shows that work with minimalist stuff. I remember seeing a show when I was a kid at the Young People's Theater in Toronto, and it was just one guy in a wicker basket, and the wicker basket became everything. It was his seat on the train. It was his basket or his suitcase that he was traveling with. It was like everything, and I'm always sort of mesmerized by that kind of minimalist yet very imaginative theater. And yeah, so and I mean I think I've gone through all the those playwrights that I mentioned. I've gone through all their names in animals that we have. We currently have a dog named Albie and a cat named oh no, he passed on, but we have Murakami after Haruki Murakami, the novelist. So
Very cool. Yeah. Um, they live on. Well,
yes.
of course, great ones live on. Yeah, for a while at least. I don't know about forever if we're just talking about absurdism because
Mhm.
what is forever? But anyways, so can you tell me a little bit about your creative process? Like, how do you start? Does it come from the outside world
Yeah.
inspiration? Does it come from like this internal thing? How do you kind of wrestle your idea onto paper?
I'd say usually it comes from it's usually a conversation. I usually start writing down something that I'm hearing and I don't understand what it is yet. Most of my stuff is people talking, and then I think it's the sort of exploration to figure out what they're talking about. And I don't know. I just sort of see things in my head that come from some stuff comes from other sources. Like I read a lot of biographies and I'm fascinated by people's lives, and I steal little bits from there. But yeah, it's a conversation that starts um, uh, and I don't know what it is, and I have to explore, and that's the fun part is exploring what they're talking about and why they're talking about it. Because I think if I already know the answer, I get bored really
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And how has your process changed and evolved over time?
Ooh. I would say I write less now, or at least I don't write as many things down now. I tend to sort of spin through the ideas and play them out in my head before I put them on paper. Before I used to write every little thing that came into my head,
Mm,
and
yeah,
so great, but you end up with notebooks full of just stuff. And
yeah,
now I think life also has changed and grown, and I have kids, and there's not as much time. So
totally. Yeah, yeah. How is having uh kids, how has that affected your writing?
oh, hugely. There's something really beautiful and difficult about looking down at a small version of yourself and
Yeah.
thinking it takes you back to what you went through as a kid and what you felt, and trying to see it from both sides, I think, has really affected it. I One thing I've always loved is I love children's theater because I think children's theater takes a lot more risks than a lot of adult theater does,
Mm,
and they're willing to play, and kids are willing to go with you, which is the amazing thing. A lot of times adults won't kind of go
right.
down that rabbit hole with you, where kids will go, all right, we're doing this, let's go.
Mm,
And so I think I've tried to add a little more playfulness back to what I do. But I say that, but the piece I'm doing now really isn't that playful. But um, yeah, I don't know. It has certainly changed my perspective. It's certainly brought me back around to a lot of the things from my own childhood that perhaps I've run from for a long time and had to deal
mhm,
with.
mhm.
It's good.
Yeah,
Hard, but
yeah,
it's good.
yeah. I've heard those things. I don't have kids myself, but I can imagine it just like completely shifting and
Oh yeah.
pulling things out that you didn't know were part of you, etc.
Sure.
I don't know, obviously, but I've heard some things that it's a pretty amazing experience. Um, and a very common one too, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess you kind of did mention the play that you're bringing to Fringe North this year. Can you talk to me about that play and explain to the viewers what
Sure.
it's about?
Well, it's called Home, a Eulogy, and this is a new experience for me because this is sort of it's basically a one-man show, and I've never done that before. I It's just not something that comes sort of naturally and easy to me, and so this was a real challenge to bring it forward. And um, it's actually focused on my mother, and she went through a lot of mental illness and had a lot of troubles in her life. And so it's kind of she passed away a couple years ago, and she never really got a proper funeral. And so this is my eulogy to her at the funeral, um, interspersed with some music and uh, other bits. But it's it's very emotionally challenging. It was really hard to face a lot of this stuff and write about it. And I've done that in the past in other ways, but it's always been in a fictional
Mm.
sort of aspect. And this is a lot more real and a lot more about my life and what I went through and what my sister went through. And so it's a really new aspect for me. It's kind of getting up there and putting myself uh, there on the stage, which I have never really done. Always covered it up
Wow.
with other stories and stuff. So this was a really hard thing to write, and might be a really hard thing to perform. But I think I'm doing this for me more than anything
Mm.
else. I'd love people to come see it, but even if they don't, I think this has been a really good thing for me to go through, and I learned a lot about myself and explored a lot of my past, which as I said before, I've kind of run from my whole life. So yeah, this is it's a big step for me. I just hope it translates well. The people who've read it say it's really good, and I just hope I can actually present it as well as I've written it. That's always the challenge.
Yeah. 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 That sounds really intense. But
Yeah,
and like vulnerable and yeah.
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 Quite
I
a lot
hope
of
you
tears.
have
Thing.
pardon me.
Quite a lot of tears writing this thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. But I hope it's been cathartic, you know?
yeah, yeah, and
Like
I think that's the big thing is I wanted to try it in a place that's something like the Fringe where it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be trying to reach for something that I haven't done before.
Multi-arts extravaganza. Experience the unexpected with captivating performances, mesmerizing music, and stunning art. Inside and outside the iconic Sault Ste. Marie Museum Clock Tower, in the heart of downtown Sault Ste. Marie, where history meets the arts in celebration like no other. Join us at the Fringe North Festival and make memories that will last a lifetime. Fringe North Festival. For more information, visit our website at siouxfringe.com or find us on social media.
So
yeah. Well, any sort of performance that I've seen has is always like the best ones are always just raw emotional, like when the performers are really in a space and there can be like little mistakes or blunders or whatever, but it's they're there in they're really giving the viewers, I don't know, they're expressing the thing. It's not acting, it's really like kind of becoming and expressing. Anyways, that sounds really difficult, but also very beautiful. So, congratulations on this work. Um, I'm sure it'll be important for people to see too, because I think like potentially themes that other people have dealt with, and death and loss is something that everyone deals with. So, yeah, yeah. sharing work like that is, I think it's very important. But yeah, sorry, I had a question, and now I'm like, okay, this is a kind of weird transition into the next question. But like obviously that piece was you mentioned it was challenging, but you can talk about that if you want. But I'm kind of thinking on the grand scheme of things, have you gone through creative challenges, like working through playwriting, figuring out theater, just like going through creative lows and highs, and how have you navigated that, and like what have you learned over time?
That's a good question. Yeah, no, I've gone through writing, through shows. I've gone through probably the gamut of everything. I've had a show that took me 3 years and many, many headaches to write. I've had productions where we've gotten so far and then we've had to drop it and not do it. I've had all sorts of things. I mean, when you're working in the world of really not, of not paying people to do, it's not a professional production where you got all the money to pay all the actors and they kind of have to do it. You tend to go down the road of ups and downs and in emotional ways. I mean, yeah, I think I've dealt with it as best I can. Kind of the thing of the show must go on. If we're in a show and it's not going right, you just push through and you try to do your best. But I think probably a lot of the harder stuff is the writing, and in that sometimes you just can't force it. It just has to happen when it happens. And things I've started and put in a drawer for 10 years and pulled back out and tried again. Some stuff still hasn't been written, and I don't know if it can, and I'm going to keep trying. But I think what I've learned is, just sort of you kind of have to let the art speak for itself, be it something you're writing or a production that you're doing. Sometimes it's not putting so much control on it, and just, I imagine it would be the same with painting, that sometimes it's just not going to work the way you vision it, but it will find itself, right? And it will find its way out. And some of my favorite stuff is actors bringing things to a character that I never saw. And it isn't until they step in there and go, what if I did this? And then suddenly it's like, oh, wow, I never saw it that way. I never envisioned this at all. Well, I've had a couple of my shows done numerous times, and there's one called Without Whom, which has a couple of older actors in it, a man and a woman. And I had a woman, I had the same woman play off of, I think, 3 different guys in different productions. We ended up with the same actress, but different actors. And just watching the change, even in her playing off of different people, is fascinating, and sort of seeing where you can go with other people's input. I think that's one of the things I like about theater is you're not your work's only like 50% done when you've written the play, because what other people bring to it is so incredible and so different that you've got to be willing to let that go. I think some writers get really stuck on, no, it has to be this and it's this character. And I don't think that's worth doing, because theater is such a unique thing that happens in the moment. You can do the same play 3 times and it'll be completely different based on who you have in it. And so that would be the biggest thing I've learned, is to sort of let the piece, let the work be what it is at that time, and not try to control it.
That's cool. It's like a live organism, I guess. Yeah, that's interesting. You answered a bit of this question. But I'm kind of interested in your interest in working with people. Do you find there are challenges, or are you mostly just like, this is great, this is what you envision? Like, what have you learned about people and actors and egos and all that stuff in
Uh,
in
I've learned
theater.
that there seems to be weirdly more egos in the non-professional world than in the professional. Uh,
Really? That's
yeah,
interesting.
it's fascinating. I've dealt with
Huh.
sort of the most ridiculous. I've dealt with wonderful people who you never would have thought could have pulled something off, to people who you thought should have done a great job and just I don't know what, just destroyed what they were trying to do.
Wow.
Um, I don't know. It's a weird game, right? Because theater is so, like anything you're performing on stage, you're reacting off an audience, you're feeding off an audience. So I get the ego side of it, that you need, an actor wants to feel like they're doing a good job, feel important, feel that, but at the same time, it can get out of hand. I've had awful situations with people. I've had great ones. Um, I really like working with people that aren't perhaps too versed in theater, because they don't come in with preconceived notions of how to do things,
Right.
and they're willing to play around and try stuff. I, it's a love-hate thing, because I think it's wonderful and I love what people bring to it, but it also drives you bonkers sometimes, because
Yeah.
you're trying to get something across, and the person just won't see it the way you do, or refuses to try to work with you on it, or again, they come up with a preconceived idea of what they think it should be, and they will not change that. um I find the best stuff is when everyone works together, but that's hard to get. It's hard to get a group of
Yeah.
people with completely different personalities to sort of mesh. And when it does, it's amazing. But there's been shows that have just been a nightmare to sort of pull together. In the end, it can be great, but you're all exhausted at the end. So you're
Yeah.
basically hitting each other the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not versed or experienced in the world of theater at all. So it's interesting to hear just like the different creative, I guess, challenges that you have, like that people in theater that's like they're facing not only their own understanding of the work or understanding of their own creativity, but you're kind of dealing with all of these other people and dynamics and trying to fit it together. And it's so cool. Yeah, yeah, it's great. But it is interesting that you mentioned that writing is still the most difficult part.
Hmm.
And I've heard this so many times. Like you think if you're a writer, if you're a painter, if you're a sculptor, if whatever you are, a musician, like a songwriter, it's a lot of people are like, well, I find it really difficult. Like I've heard this many times. Like some of my favorite writers have said, like it's really, really difficult to write. Um, it sometimes comes easy, but most of the time it doesn't. And I find that kind of the same thing with like, it doesn't get easier with like painting. It just, I think you just build, like you mentioned, like these preconceived notions of like what you think it might be. And you're constantly trying to like navigate that and basically unlearn and learn and unlearn because I have the same feeling, same notions of basically not controlling it. Like the best work allows a lot of information through, and you're not controlling it in any way. And I kind of think of it like an artist, a friend of mine mentions it. Like I mentioned this on another podcast too, but artist as vessel, and I think of that often. Like you fill up, and when you're ready to like pour it out, you allow that information
Yeah.
out, which is beautiful. And I think it's a common um, kind of analogy or metaphor. But yeah, anyways, can you tell me a little bit about any future plans about what you kind of envision? I guess you haven't performed this one person play yet. But do you think that you'll kind of step back from that? I guess it's hard to answer right now.
Yeah, I
But
don't know. I'm gonna see
yeah,
how it goes, I guess, first. And
yeah,
I mean, one of the interesting things, that's something that's mentioned in the play, is that I think I kind of figured out, and I didn't realize this before, but I think I figured out that in some ways, I was writing for my mom all this time. Because I there was a rebellion against her in the beginning, and then later on I think as much as I went against I've okay, I'll say this. We were very similar in ways, and so our fights, like if we got into a fight, it would go on forever because neither side would back down, kind of thing. And I think my similarities to her kind of colored a lot of the stuff I wrote. And what I'm finding now is, now that she's gone, I'm not sure who I'm writing to or writing for, I guess, at this point. So it's been an interesting couple of years to try to sort of navigate, because now both my parents have passed on, and I have sort of a freedom to say what I want about what I went through, and what I guess want to say. And I'm not sure exactly. I think I'm trying to find my voice again in a weird way, and I don't know if this is the way forward. I don't know if this piece is going to be something that I want to continue or develop more, or if it's just something I needed to do for now and put aside. I don't know. I feel that's where I sort of feel lost right now, and I mentioned that in the show, that I'm not sure where I'm going, and there's something that's terrifying about that, and something that's really exciting, because maybe it's a whole new chapter of stuff that I haven't delved into before like this. So
yeah, that's an exciting place to be, for sure. Kind of terrifying.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah. But I think I don't know, I feel that way with my work right now too, but it's like every few months almost, where you're kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or like you think you know what you're doing, but every time you start something new, it's just, sometimes, it's not, you don't actually know. Like, I think it's just comfort. Like, you try to tell yourself, oh, this is how I did it before, so this is what I'm going to do again. But I never really, no.
I always like the saying that artists should always be just slightly below the waterline. You should be just about to drown.
Yeah.
Or a good place to be, because you're creative there, and you're not falling back on things you've done before. And what you were saying about art being hard, I think it gets harder as you go, because you don't want to do the same thing again. You don't want to repeat yourself. You want to find a new, because you want to keep it interesting for yourself too. So
Yeah. And I think part of that is also knowing the feeling, and kind of trying to chase the feeling of when it's like the best,
yeah.
And so, because like when you're young and you're free and you're just kind of trying things, and well, I use the word inspiration because it's literally inspiration. Like, when you are inspired by something, you feel compelled to like let it out. And whether that comes through the form of writing in your case, and you're just like, I have these ideas and it's so exciting. You don't have any external pressure, external preconceived notions of what it should be like. Also, just people knowing your work. If that feels limiting in a sense, like the more you keep working, the more difficult it is to like branch out and take chances, because you want to stay somewhat consistent, but that's ridiculous. Like, you don't need to. Like, I often think like, because we create these barriers for ourselves, and I know a lot of artists talk about this, is like, really, it's really hard, like the longer you work, is to keep breaking these. But it sounds like you're doing this right now with your work. Yeah, and that's pretty powerful. But it is hard to do. And the like drowning piece, that made me think of, I'm gonna forget the artist, but there's a painter who talks about seeing struggle in the work. Like, you can see the battle a little bit, and like I think that translates to performance as well, or writing. Like, when you can tell that the writer really, really thought, and maybe yeah, like it's not just like a fluffy kind of fairy tale. Like, I mean, that could be great too, but
It can be. It has its
yeah,
place for sure, but
yeah. But they let some of themselves in there in the voice
yeah.
a little bit. Yeah. Um, and like back and forth. Anyways, yeah, we have a few more minutes before I'd like to wrap up, if that's okay. But I usually always ask, what is some of the best advice that you've been given or that you've heard? Because that can be a hard question, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because it plays back to my mom again. And it's something that I tell my own kids, and that is she always said when we were young, do the things that you want to do in life and don't let anyone tell you that you can't.
Wow.
Now, it changed later on to why do you have to write these things? And, like why do you, but it always stuck with me. And I think that's really important. And we make sure, like we've always said to our kids too, that, um, do the thing that you're passionate about. Like you have to make money, you have to live and all that sort of stuff, but do the thing you want to do in life. And even if we don't like it, like as long as you're not, committing crimes and, and
Yeah.
doing things that don't fit with the world, as long as you're not hurting anyone. If you are passionate about something, you should do it. And even if we sit there and go, why are you doing that? I don't like that. Well, tough. It's not our life, it's your life.
Mhm.
And I do thank my mom for that. When we were young, that she kind of burned that into us, and I think that's really, really an important message. And it still kind of resonates today. And I would say, no matter what, is this is really hard for me to do, but don't listen to anybody else. Do what motivates you and what gets you there. And like we were talking when you were talking about artistic process and the struggle in that, the artists that I love, the musicians and the writers that I love the most are the people who change completely what they're doing and go, nope, I'm going 360 and I'm going this way now. And that's
Yeah.
hard. You're going to lose audience, you're going to lose fans
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
like the same and they like to, but you know what, that's the best thing for them to do,
Yeah.
because you're not sitting there going, well, I'm bored, or I'm not interested in what I'm doing, and I don't like it anymore. You don't get into the one that comes to mind is like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle killing off Sherlock Holmes because he was sick of him. It's like you shouldn't get to that point. You should,
Yeah. Yeah. Don't resent it so much that you don't do it anymore, or like you completely
yeah,
just, yeah.
it's like, why are you in it? And it shouldn't matter. And I know it's harder if you're a bigger name and you're in the world, people expect certain things from you, but I always respect the people who just try, what, I'm doing this now, I've never done this, I'm gonna do this now, I'm gonna experiment. And I love that. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people lose that in life and they just get stuck in their path, and it's sad because you're missing out on a lot of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. I think that's really awesome advice. But I think people miss out on that, not just in creatively either. Like I think we really get um, caught up, and you kind of mentioned that's what like adults kind of end up going towards this path of just plugging along and continuing along. I guess societal expectations kind of force that upon us, but yeah. Oh, taking chances. That's the best thing.
It's hard. It's the hardest thing in the world to do, but it's worth it
Yeah.
in the end.
Yeah. Um, if do you have any advice for young writers or playwrights, or even older ones? Because on that note, like we're just talking about people taking
Sure.
chances, be at any age.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing I would say for playwrights anyway is to get out there and not, like, you can't just sit and write. You have to get out there and do shows. You have to be, I've done a lot of stage managing. I've done a lot of, reluctantly done a lot of acting. And I think the best thing you can do is see theater from every angle. Like I've now I work at the Bushplane Museum, but before that I worked at a lot of theaters. And I've been the front of house manager for many theaters. I've I've looked at theater from every aspect and all sorts of different angles. And I think that's the best thing, because you see stuff that you wouldn't see, or you see it in a way you wouldn't see it. If you stage manage, I've stage managed a lot of my own shows, and one of the reasons I like doing that is I'm not the director, I'm not in charge of the show, but I am there to see it kind of develop, and I can make suggestions and I can bring stuff in, but I can also learn from watching everybody. I'm not just showing up for the show, I'm showing up to every day and seeing what everyone's going through and how they're developing and why, and what works and what doesn't. And I think that's the biggest thing is get out there in any form and be a part of theater, so you can learn your craft from different angles, I guess.
Yeah, that's some more great advice. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I'm really excited for your show at Fringe North. It'll be great and beautiful, and I wish you all the luck in preparation for it. RJ Downs, thanks for joining.
For having me.
Yeah. RJ Downs' show will be at Fringe North between August 21st and 25th in Sault Ste. Marie. So don't forget to check out the website below for more information, and more information on RJ Downs and the rest of the artists.
Hooray there! I'm the Hitherso, the proud mascot of Fringe North 2024. You'll see me swaying in the wind throughout the festival, just like I do in the beautiful shorelines of Manitoulin Island. I'm an artist in my own right, bringing a touch of natural beauty wherever I go. Fringe North is all about celebrating the vibrant arts community in the north. And guess what? 100% of our box office sales goes straight to paying the amazing artists who bring the festival to life. But to keep the magic going, we need your help. If you spot me around the festival, feel free to ask me questions or discover cool facts about Fringe North. And most importantly, tip the Fringe. Your support helps us to continue to bring this incredible festival back year after year. So, want to support Fringe North? Tip the Fringe and let the arts flourish. Remember, Fringe North, expect the unexpected. For more information on how to tip the Fringe, head on over to SaultFringe.com.